Okay, hi everyone. So we are back now with the next part of our chapter 10, where we are going to look into details on uncertainty. So, guys, just in case you are wondering, when you talk about uncertainty, what is important for you to know is that um, you have three major areas, okay, to assess uncertainty, where uncertainty is actually assessed, sorry, it's not even assessed, it's called described, okay, using the payback period, the adjusted payback period, and also sensitivity analysis. Guys, now I want you to pay attention to sensitivity analysis. Why I ask you to pay attention to sensitivity analysis is because in sensitivity analysis what happens is that um the examiner will ask you few different types of sensitivity analysis calculation. So now let's talk first about what is sensitivity analysis. So does anyone here have any idea about what is sensitivity analysis? To be very frank with you, I have the expectation that you know what sensitivity analysis is because this has been mentioned in a few areas in your ACCA paper, example in your costing paper, performance management, and also in the lower level paper. But you do a very simple, straightforward sensitivity analysis calculation. Now, when you talk about sensitivity analysis, what is sensitivity analysis? How do I calculate sensitivity analysis? Sensitivity analysis, you are actually calculating how sensitive is a variable to the NPV of a project. How sensitive is the NPV to a variable of the project? What it means is that when there is a small change in your variable, how would your NPV react? If your NPV react positively, mm, as in it does not NPV does not move to become zero, then you don't have an issue. But you will have an issue when your NPV moves to become negative. Okay, why is it important for you to identify this? Or what is the reason for you to identify this? So, the reason for you to identify the variable that will affect the NPV in such a way where NPV becomes zero, that is the variable that the management of an organization, of a company, will have to focus their attention, because that is the variable that can affect the sensitivity analysis, can affect the NPV very badly. So guys, I just want you to remember, whenever you talk about sensitivity analysis, it's about identifying the NPV that will affect the project in such a way project will become project NPV will become zero or negative. So now I keep talking about variable that affects the NPV. So what are these variables that I'm talking about that may affect the NPV? So here I've already highlighted the variables are selling price, sales volume, operating cost, and also cost of capital. So these are the variables that will affect your NPV in such a way NPV may become negative. But guys, just for your information, remember when we calculate NPV, what was our cash flow? So what were the items or the variables that were used in your NPV calculation? It was all this: your cash inflow, which is your sales, cash outflow, variable cost, fixed cost, and then you have operating cash flow, tax percentage, initial investment, scrap value, tax saving, working capital, and discount factor. So all these are variables that will affect your project NPV, correct? Because if there is some changes in either one of these elements, it will affect the NPV in such a way the NPV may become zero or negative. Right? Now, what you are doing is, when I say variable can be any one of these items, plus sales volume as well. Of course, sales volume, you don't see it directly inside here, but it indirectly affects your calculation, right? So sales volume. So all these will affect your NPV in such a way it may become zero or negative. Now, let's go back to your NPV calculation. So since you already know what is NPV, how do you calculate NPV? So the approach that we use towards sensitivity analysis is that we normally will calculate the project NPV, okay, as per how you normally calculate your NPV. And then after that, you need to calculate your present value of cash flows. So when I say present value of cash flows, what is it? That means it's the total present value of whatever cash flow is required to be calculated by you. All right. Now, so when you look at my formula here, I've given you NPV over PV of project variable. So NPV, the working number one, is what we have been doing. It's a normal NPV calculation. Normal NPV calculation, all right? While the second working number two, is calculating the PV of a project variable, working number two. Now, so the one where we need to pay attention is working number two under PV of cash flow. What I require you to do is, okay, you need to calculate the total present value of your cash flows. So how do you do that? All right, you must remember, whenever you are calculating cash flow, it depends on what cash flow the examiner is giving you. It can be, the cash flow can be sales, it can be variable costs, it can be fixed costs, it can be initial investment. This is what examiner has given you, and this is what he has been he has asked before for you to calculate this value. Now, when you talk about the present value of project cash flow also, remember what I am calculating. That means this present value is actually the total present value of your cash flows. Here, the total. That means if you have revenue, you discount your revenue after tax. So guys, please remember, all of your cash flows here, you need to calculate. So just put a note for yourself here. After tax cash flow, right? So revenue, you discount it minus tax, and then you total everything up, you get your total present value of cash flows. Now, besides that, when you talk about your present value of cost, then you're going to be asking me like, how do I calculate PV of my costs after tax? So you must remember that this cost, when you say after tax, that means your tax will be a refund. Why is your tax a refund? Because your cost is a negative cash flow. When you minus the tax, it will actually be a positive value. So remember, if your cash flow is negative, your tax is positive. Okay, now I hope everything here is very clear. Now I've got a question. So which percentage is more sensitive? Is it the lower percentage or the higher percentage? And please also help to answer your own question, as in what is the more sensitive variable and why. Okay, so if you look at the information that has been given to you, you need to identify which variable is actually the most sensitive by looking at the variable with the lowest percentage. So the lower the percentage, the more sensitive your project NPV project variable is. All right. Why is it more sensitive? Because think about it this way. It only takes me, okay, think about it this way. It only takes me 2% before my NPV becomes negative, or it will take 5% before my NPV becomes negative. If 5%, you wait a longer time before your NPV gets negative. If it is 2%, you wait for a shorter time before your NPV becomes negative. So you need to be a bit careful, because when you do this calculation, when you be able to identify the percentage, you must understand that the lower the percentage, the higher the sensitivity of the variable. Okay. Now, as opposed to that, the higher the percentage, the less sensitive is the variable. So what and why do you need to calculate this sensitivity analysis? What's the objective? What's the reason you calculate sensitivity analysis? So the reason you calculate sensitivity analysis is to ensure that you will be able to focus on the most sensitive variable. You ensure that you control the variable, you monitor the variable so that the variable is not going to affect the NPV of the company. So let's say you say that the sales is the most variable. So what you will do is you will make sure that you control or you monitor the selling price in such a way where it will not affect the project NPV, right? And then, guys, I just want you to pay attention to a few other things as well. Your examiner may ask you to calculate the sensitivity of cash flow, which what I've mentioned here. Number two, the examiner can ask you to calculate sensitivity of cost of capital. And number three, he can ask you to calculate the sensitivity of your sales volume. Okay. So to calculate sensitivity of sales volume, the cash flow that you are going to use is contribution. So guys, I just want to remind you that when you calculate sensitivity analysis of sales volume, you first need to find contribution, and then you include contribution as part of this working. That means the working is the same, the cash flow is the same. The only difference is the cash flow that you are using will be contribution. All right. So please be aware of that. Please be mindful of that. Okay. I definitely will give you questions to try. Let me just share my screen with you. Okay. I'm going to give you we're going to do one question together. This question is actually quite interesting. I mean, I find it quite interesting. So what do you do? How do you do it? Okay, I'm going to do a question on calculating the sensitivity analysis. Let's look at the question, the additional questions. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Let me share my screen, guys. So look at the new question. Okay, let me see whether I'm sharing the right screen. Additional questions. Okay. Okay, here. you are the management accountant and you are worried about the risk project. Okay, so assess sensitivity of the positive NPV to the selling price and also to setup cost. So guys, whenever you look at sensitivity analysis, how do you do the question? What is your step? So step number one, always remember to write your formula. So here my formula will be NPV over PV of cash flow, right? Step number two, you need to calculate, okay, if NPV is not given, you need to calculate NPV. And step number three, you need to calculate PV of cash flow. Please use the table that I taught you, because the table that I taught you actually makes your life a whole lot easier. All right. So now let's start. So guys, I'm going to read the question and I'm going to move to another screen and write my answers there. Okay. Now, an investment in a new product is being planned. The product has an expected life of 2 years. Revenue is estimated to be 21.5 million per year. Setup costs are 15.5 million. Running cost is 10 million per year. The cost of capital is 10% post-tax, after tax cost of capital. Tax is paid at 20% in the same year profit arises, and setup cost is not allowable for tax purposes. Now, so he has already given you the information, revenue, cost, profit, tax, your initial investment. So these are all my net cash flows, discount factor, PV, and also NPV. So he asked you to calculate two things, the selling price and the setup cost. This one, if selling price, you use the PV of cash flow method for both. Okay, setup cost is your initial investment. All right, so let's do this together. Let me switch my screen. Hold on. Okay, here. Sensitivity. Analysis. Okay, now, when you talk about sensitivity analysis, remember our formula, number one, selling price. So NPV over PV of selling price. Okay, so now must remember you are calculating year, discount factor, PV of cash flow after tax. So year one, year two, discount factor is 10%. Okay, my present value of cash flow. So guys, my sales revenue is 21,500. After tax is 0.8%. And to calculate the present value, I need to discount it at 0.909. Same, 21,500 after tax multiply 0.826. So what is my present value of after tax sales? So this is 15,635. This is 14,207. So the total present value of cash flow is 29,842. Okay, guys, I just want to explain about this. Why do I do it this way? Okay, both long. So why do I do it this way? Okay, because I take my cash flow, which is my sales revenue. If I pay tax, what is left is 80%. So that's why I take this cash flow, multiply 1 minus T to get after tax cash flow, then I discount it. Okay, now NPV was already given in the question. The NPV that was given in the question was 462. The present value of future cash flow that you have is 29. So 462 over the answer is 1.55%. Guys, this is a very low figure. It's actually considered as very sensitive. Okay, now the next one, the sensitivity of initial investment, or they call it setup cost in the question. Guys, do you have any after tax present value? No, right? Because your setup cost is a year zero item, no tax. So if I'm not mistaken, it's 15,500. Okay, 15,500 multiply 0. No tax, multiply 1.000. So sensitivity analysis equals to NPV 462 over 15,500 divided by 100. This is 3%. So guys, when you want to make a conclusion between 3% and 1.55, which one is lower? So between, this is not what you write, I'm just writing for you guys for your own reference. Percent, the lower value means more sensitive. Okay, so in this one, the most sensitive variable, okay, so the conclusion, maybe I don't write it like this. Okay, your conclusion that you write in your exam, the most sensitive variable is the most sensitive variable is the selling price as a small change will affect the NPV. Okay, now this is how you write it. Okay, I'm not going to do further because I've got a tutorial session later which I'm going to do together with you. So what I need you to do is, okay, for the time being, let's go back to my slides, okay. Um, Hmm, okay, my slides here. Okay, so now I have already shown you exactly how we do the calculation for sensitivity analysis. What I need you to do, guys, is later when I do a question, I want you to pay attention to me doing the question. Why is it very important? Because different methods are normally used to calculate the the sensitivity analysis. I have not taught you how to calculate sensitivity of project discount factor, and I've not taught you how to calculate the sales volume. So that is something that we need to pay more attention. We need to be careful of, because we really need to ensure that we know how to calculate all these figures. All right. Now, so what is the major disadvantage of this sensitivity analysis? The major disadvantage of the sensitivity analysis is the fact that this sensitivity analysis, when you calculate it, it looks at the variables in isolation. Now you must be careful, because your variables are normally interrelated to each other. There is no one variable standalone only that affects your project NPV. So you need to be a bit aware of that, because when you calculate sensitivity analysis, actually it's looking at project variable in isolation. Normally, you will know that when one project variable change, the other will change as well. So you must be able to identify whether there is any interrelationship between the project variables. If you are able to identify the interrelationship between your project variables, then you will know exactly how and when you need to control your project variable in such a way where it would not affect your project NPV. Now, so this makes the sensitivity analysis a little bit unrealistic. The fact that it is looking into project variables in isolation. So what you need to do is you need to ensure that you must take into account for interrelationship, because it is more practical and more reliable and also more realistic, right? Now, sometimes when you calculate the sensitivity analysis as well, you may have to look into certain variables where there may be no control that any manager can place. Example, let's say you calculate the sensitivity of the tax items, then because the tax rate is too high, this may affect the cash flow of your project, and hence, as a result of that, you may not be able to have any control over the factors. So sometimes calculating the sensitivity analysis may be redundant, especially when you cannot exercise any control towards that particular variable. And also, when you are calculating sensitivity analysis, you are not making a decision. It is not a decision making model. What it is it is just a model that will be used for you to direct attention to the variables of your NPV that is the most sensitive. So you are not actually providing any form of decision to your higher level management. All that you are doing is you are just ensuring, or you are just looking at the variable that is more sensitive. So it's not a decision making, it's just for you to be able to direct your attention accordingly. All right. So the next one, which actually is not covered in detail in your examination, would be the simulation model. So if you look here, can you guys just add one more, number 4? Simulation. Before I proceed, let me share a new screen. All right, here, because I want to write a little bit about the simulation model. Okay, so guys, the first thing that you need to know is you need to know what is simulation model. Okay, simulation, it is actually a sensitivity analysis type calculation where you can look at the interrelationship between variables, all right, and how it will affect the project NPV. So when I talk about simulation, normally when I talk to my students about simulation, I always tell them to remember it in a simple manner. What is the simple manner that that you remember it as? It is a similar calculation as sensitivity analysis. That means it's looking at the sensitivity of the variable, but now it's looking at sensitivity of variables of an organization that will affect the NPV. So instead of looking at just one variable, you are looking at how multiple variable will affect the project NPV in such a way the NPV will become zero. So as a result of that, this simulation model will take into account interrelationship of variables. So it overcomes the problem that you have in your sensitivity analysis, okay, where in sensitivity analysis you had the problem where you were unable to come up with an interrelationship between your variables, but here you are able to do it because you will look at how multiple variables will affect your project NPV. Okay, so what are the advantages and the disadvantages of this simulation model? So let me write first. Simulation count all project that can affect the NPV. Okay, and then besides that, you must know that in this concept you actually use probabilities. Okay, the method that you will use is you will use probability analysis. And okay, let's talk about the advantage. Okay guys, so I'm not going to write the advantage and the disadvantage. I'm just going to discuss the advantage and disadvantage, and then we will look at the next topic directly. Okay, so what are the advantages and the disadvantages? Number one, when you are calculating simulation methodology, you actually include all the possible outcomes for your calculation of NPV. Number two, the outcomes are easily understood. Why do I say that the outcomes are easily understood? This is because when you have calculated it, you will look at which which variable will affect your NPV. And you use just a probability concept. So it's something that you already know. Now, the next one would be you can apply it in a wide range of calculation. That means you can use it throughout the company's projects, okay, and estimate the um, variables that may affect the NPV of your project. As for the disadvantage, the problem is that the model is rather complex and also very pricey. It is expensive for the company to set up this um, simulation model. And sometimes, remember, when you calculate the probability, it is subjective. So when it is subjective, you may find it difficult to formulate this probability analysis. So guys, just a quick reminder, whenever you are calculating, the simulation, okay, you will use the concept of probability. But I also want to remind you, you guys are lucky because simulation is a method that you have to use computer to estimate, because the data is too huge for you to be able to use just a manual calculation. So as such, your examiner will not require you to calculate the simulation method in your examination. However, your examiner has stated that he wants you to know what is the concept, what are the advantages, and what are the disadvantages of the simulation model. All right. So, if you guys have no further questions, okay, if you can understand, sorry, I keep assuming that you guys are, I'm teaching you, so I keep saying if you don't have further questions, okay, but yep, as of chapter 10, we stop here for chapter 10, but I will still have a tutorial session, okay, as usual. I will still have a tutorial session, and in the tutorial session, I would do a sensitivity analysis question, a probability type question. Maybe I would do about 3 or 4 questions. Let's see how it goes. All right. So I will see you guys in the next video for my tutorial on chapter 10. And at the same time, I will also try to do more questions, okay, to help to guide you, especially in the Excel format for the CBE calculation. All right. So I'll see you guys in the next video for the tutorial session.